Hi, hopefully I'm getting this right. I can only use a flash with my back camera, so. Observations from an autistic mind. 3, technically, but really number 2. Probably change the name a little bit. Close that 10 easier. I have a lot on my mind, and so this may be long or short because with my ramblings I tend to forget stuff, and when I actually try to let out what's on my mind, it kind of goes blank. But I want to elaborate more. I'll be tagging people on my history with depression and suicide, and wanted to thank a few people. So, nice story. Pachi, pachi, pachi. Yay, weep anime shit. I'm weep. If I seem weird, I was having pains that was moving in migraines. I've had chronic pain since middle school. I'm actually, as soon as I said that, I'm feeling a little pain now. Yay. And so I was forced to take an opioid. Luckily for me, in this confession, sorry doctor, but I did not see another way, and hell, it's not fully even working despite a larger normal dose. And I haven't taken a single opioid in months. I don't take opioids frequently, and the last time I did, I swore them off because my body reacts very negatively to opioids, which is a good thing, because you can't get high on something that leaves a negative impression on you and makes you want to stay away from it. My reactions to a small dose of Finnegan is so bad that I'd rather throw up than take Finnegan. And I have constant nausea and things that can trigger extreme nausea. But yeah, this is turning negative. Back on track. Okay, why I was talking about the high and why I was weird is, we'll explain if I seem weird, but also the other thing is that when I'm on an opioid high, because when you take an opioid, it's a high, you can frame it however you want, you don't have to take it multiple times or abuse something to get high. Shit just naturally gets you high. That time after you take laughing gas, they call it laughing gas sometimes, but when you get a fucking tooth drilled or whatever, that after part you don't remember, and the slight part you do remember, where you're laughing your ass off, making jokes, or freaking out or crying, is because you're high. High is a very broad term. I don't know why I went on that tangent. But during the small moment of a high that will crash or into a panic attack while being high, so it won't start even going down yet, I'll have a panic attack. It also likes to tear up my stomach. I am nauseous. It also dehydrates me. But the high makes me chatty and crave to talk, which I'm an introvert. Some of you may not like the definition. I don't even haven't fully researched it, and it is very dumb to try to, I don't like saying that. It is yet dumb trying to categorize millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people into 2 categories. We just don't fit nicely that way. We're too diverse. too diverse to even one aspect of the many things that humans do, that there is just two forms of it. No. But I am able to think clearer, which is nice for the small short of time. Kind of. My thoughts ramble, but my thoughts always go in a million directions. It's Asperger's. I feel like I have more multitasking and less multitasking because of that, because I can jumble a bunch of different thoughts together at the same time and cross them together, but it's hard for me to stop a lot of the images my brains will want to produce sometimes, and also just even if I don't want them to be produced, it's hard to control that chaotic symphony, as I like to call it. And so, good multitasking because I can process a lot of thoughts at once, but my brain is occupied with my inner conscious, and so my outwards multitasking is shit because I'm already doing a lot in my head. And even trying to focus on the real world is a task and an effort. So I'm still doing, even when trying to work in the real world, I'm still doing another task a lot of people don't have to do. A lot, maybe. But I've been dealing with depression since middle school. I did not have the name for it. I've been dealing with anxiety, severe anxiety since middle school, and I had once, not jokingly, but in a weird way, because I believe I've grown a lot. I still think of myself as a child, but I believe I've grown a lot each year of my life. Sorry, brain fogging. I've grown a lot. Child. Damn it. Forgot my entire train of thought just went. Oh yeah, anxiety. But I was like, but I said it in a very weird way to other people dimly. I'd just be clutching my chest and limping over and be like, and start saying my anxiety's acting up, and eventually became, oh, that's just something Chase did. But the reason I was clutching my chest, this part, which is weird because heart's over here and lungs are, yeah, it's not a place that should feel like it's closing in and tightening upon itself. And on top of that, you start to feel as if it's causing you to suffocate a bit. And then if it gets worse, then you feel like you're suffocating a little bit. And if it gets really bad, then you literally feel like you're suffocating. But a lot of that was my own fault. I was a mess to deal with in ways I didn't realize until only later when I had the retrospective, because even when they fixed things, I didn't know they fixed. You don't fix this. There's no cure, there's no fixing. You learn to process it. You learn to realize that you're different, what your differences are, because that's a big problem. And then you learn to basically build a set of regimens, techniques, and methods in your brain to translate not just what's coming to you, the rest of the world, because it's a social disability. I misinterpret. Hold on. Okay, I didn't turn off the camera. I misinterpret. Social cues, body language, tone, meaning, all that shit. Because I have a social disability, my brain's wired different. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. Because I feel like it gives me things that others don't. Takes things, but it gives. Lord taketh, and then it giveth. But the other thing too, and I think it's forgotten a lot, or just not really, really well known, is that you also have a problem translating your words. There's basically, when we learn our native language, it turns into an autistic language. And when we start to learn being social things on basically a scientific level rather than a natural one, rather than I don't know the word for it, but I'll call it a martial way, the way you learn skills like dance and martial arts or music through like practice and other things. You learn it, and it's a different type of knowledge that's like a different part of your brain and part of your body in a sense. But for us, it's a very scientific sense and a martial sense, actually, you could say. It's just no natural sense to base off, or little, or some, and autism is a spectrum, a very wide spectrum, and so a lot of people just sometimes have a problem processing a few things. But the bot, I like calling it a bot, a translation bot. And there's been a lot of times for me where I say something and I immediately, in not even half a second, I'm like, that's not it. That's not what was in my head. It's not even so much that's not what I meant, which of course it's not what I meant, but it's just like, that's not what was in my head. And it's been a lot of times where I spent a lot of time translating it, and I was just like, that's not right, immediately after. And I didn't have to see the other person's reaction. I already knew that what I said did not convey what was in my head. And it's frustrating. It's one of the most frustrating things about being autistic. And I believe, I've heard it a few times, a lot of people who reach that level realize, we're different in a way that most other people aren't. That frustration of communication, of just, it's like, we may not just not being able to communicate to others how we're feeling pain. I've always worried that I've fucked up a lot of my diagnoses at the doctor because I didn't know how to translate my illness at the time, my symptoms, into proper words. And so many sets of symptoms can belong to just a multitude of things, and they have to use connections and a few dead ringers. I understand that much, and so me fucking up one of those could lead them into a completely different direction. At least that's how I feel, and so that's always something I'm scared, or I feel bad about. I don't know, I've had it since I was like a kid. I don't want to be a bother to other people. And that's the other frustrating thing from the other side of not being able to read people, is that I don't know when I'm being a bother a lot. And that's sad. It makes me sad. And honestly, people have frustrated me. I'm big into history. I'm big in philosophy. I think, if I'm to be honest, I'm very introspective person because that's what I like to do. I like analyzing myself. I like breaking down why I believe something to be true, why I believe something to be right or wrong, and challenging that. I like challenging other people's beliefs, which may be a bad habit. I got into a very bad habit of playing devil's advocate, even though I feel like sometimes that's necessary, because I personally feel like a lot of people don't think about the other side enough. Because even if I agree with them, if they're right, you can't defeat an enemy you don't understand. Bosses in games and people in real life have weak points. The only way to take them down is to target the weak points. If you choose not to understand anything about them, then you don't know what the weak points are. At a very literal level, physically, you don't know where the hell they are. If you just think you're hot shit and your boxing game is so good with how you throw combinations and how your footwork and everything, and you don't analyze your opponent, you don't analyze him in the ring, you don't research beforehand, you don't know when he's open, where he's typically open, you don't know if you've got a keen eye sometimes, if that opening was a fluke or was it a bait. And that can kill you. Rambling. Opioid high helps. Hate taking opioids. But anyway, back to mental illness and back to thanking people. I'm able to communicate at a level much better than I could when I was 5, and that is clearly due to the works of people in what we call the SAIL classroom. First guy I see had a SAIL program that was tailored to children on the autistic spectrum. And I feel ashamed now, and I'd like to admit, because I do want to send this to Miss Cousins, Mrs. Cousins, Mrs. Long, Mr. Behan, head SAIL teachers there. I'm sorry I forget names so very easily, and so I want to name other people, and there's some people I may even remember to talk about, but I forgot their faces. And there's a lot of people I need to thank, teacher or otherwise. To recollect myself from thoughts and again, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to communicate as efficiently as I am today. I wouldn't, that translation bot, those methods, those techniques, and sometimes just literal training to just not retreat. I'm being gross. I'm picking at my nose. I'm horribly sorry. Fuck. But those translation bots was made from the SAIL teachers with help from the SAIL teachers tailored to my specific problems, because the spectrum, from what I remember, and I can be wrong, don't quote me, I have not done enough research into my disease, but the autism spectrum is based around hundreds of symptoms, and you're placed depending on a combination of how many and how severe those are. It's an algorithm, I guess you could say. And that's how you determine you have high-functioning autism. That's a spectrum. How functioning you are. One Asperger's kid, otherwise known as Asperger's kid, could be more high-functioning than the other because they have less severe symptoms or overall symptoms. Yay. But fucking rambling. But there's a frustration that comes with that. And then just you're dealing with a lot mentally. I was dealing with a lot physically. I had a panic disorder. I need to preface this that been incidents before. A period I got sick in middle school ended up triggering a lot of physical symptoms that stayed with me the rest of my life. I have chronic abdominal pains that will random show up. I have chronic nausea, and I also have always had a phobia to nausea that I'm not able to fully get over. And while the abdominal pains aren't always there, they just will always happen, and they've been happening for 7-8 years. I'm not good at, my time perception's been getting worse, but I'm literally always nauseous. It's not a joke. I don't remember the last time I wasn't nauseous. I think I do. I had to have a procedure done, and so they had to pump me full of meds to knock me out, and then other stuff to make sure I wasn't sick afterwards. And so I remember the first time that happened. It was the first time I felt, well, at the time I called normal, but I've been like this longer than I was healthy, so not normal anymore. But the time when I was a kid, when I wasn't nauseous, when I was actually an overweight child who ate too much, which I said in one video I'm sex positive. I'm also body positive and fervent. But I was unhealthily overweight. It would have caused health problems. Yay. Rambling. So I've had a panic disorder as I can trace back to I was 5. And just that was mentally ingrained, no trauma or anything. I was sitting at the door. My favorite fast food was Burger King. And my dad was coming home. And I had asked him to get Burger King, and they remember a lot. And also, I believe my older brother there and older sister were going to be there, so he was going to remember. I knew he was going to remember because he was getting it for all of us. And so I was just jumping in a chair, like little 5 or 6-year-old me at Heather Ridge in Frisco. And all of a sudden, and the consistency later on, I just felt like I was suffocating. I literally kind of fell out the chair. I just slumped over, and I just was on the floor, and I was by myself. And this is, anyone my age knows that we're the era when phones, personal phones, cellular phones, I should say pocket cellular phones, because there was those chunky ones. I'm a techie, yay. Were big. And so those cellular phones were just starting to come up. When we were like 10, that's when the flip phones became big, and parents were afraid of, all of that. And so they didn't, even when they were out, they didn't want, a lot of us, some of you may have been spoiled. I was spoiled, but some of you may be more spoiled than me. Or some of you parents may have already caught on to the paranoia why every parent gets their kid a smartphone now, or a phone of any least, which is just that convenience factor of being able to communicate at any time is not one of the deadly conveniences, because to a parent they soon realize I can always make sure my kid's okay when I couldn't before. And that in itself, and then I can give my kid that freedom I was afraid of because of the stories I heard when I was a kid, the stuff that I experienced, or secondhand experience through stuff that happened to friends when they went out and something happened, and of course they couldn't reach anyone. And so I can live without that fear because my kid can always call me. I can always call them and check up on them. And so they're allowed to go places. And that's a great thing about cell phones. How the fuck did I get on that tangent? Oh, yeah. So, but this was before, I think, flip phones. I was really young. So I think flip phones were the next few years. And, of course, even then, I wouldn't be able to get them. I remember my Motorola. And so I felt like I was suffocating. It was one of my worst suffocating attacks. I've had some since middle school, really. But it was so odd. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And I was sitting in a chair for like 10 minutes because I could just focus sometimes. And I was just excited. Dad's coming home, Burger King. Dad's coming home with Burger King. Let's get some water. And then just all of a sudden, I can't breathe. I don't remember how long it took for it to get better. And I had a bad habit as a kid that only really broke until middle school, where I didn't tell anyone how I was feeling mentally and really bad physically. Unless it was something obvious or something I couldn't take, and I was a crier, so pain made me cry. I'm still a crier. Yeah, and so, plus, suffocating is not something where you start to cry, because you kind of can't, because you can't breathe. And I'm able to register now what I was feeling back then, because that is etched into my memory, was a panic attack. And so I know I'm hardwired for panic attacks. There's no trigger. There's nothing to trigger it. There's no reason. It was a good day. And I did get Burger King. And I think I may have still been gumming down from the panic attack afterwards. So that's one thing. The other thing is that early on in life, I would have an episode once a month where I didn't feel like doing anything, and I overall didn't feel good. I didn't know how to describe it, but the mood I was feeling, how I was feeling mentally, wasn't good. But it wasn't sad. It wasn't angry. And so I had no energy. I was a little fatigued, and one of the most memorable times was that I slumped out of bed where my legs and my ass were on the bed, but my body was just spiraled across the floor. And I worried my mom, but I wasn't trying to do that. It was just like, there was just a level of apathy where I don't know, didn't want to be there. I knew I just didn't want to move. I didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't have any energy, and it's a special feeling. But those would recurrently happen, at least like once a month. And luckily it happened enough where the next day I'm Chase. Well, the other Chase. And so at least later on I had the comfort, it's like, I just need to survive a day and I'll be fine. And that's still kind of the case. I don't know. I'm able to register now that I was depressed, and since it was triggered by nothing, like a lot of times, there was one time I tried to force myself to play a game. I love games I love games second most in the world besides my family, but forcing myself to play a game and trying to play another game just felt uncannily frustrating. And I had this sad realization. It's like, oh, this is taking everything from me. Like, I started stress eating in high school. There was one time I tried stress eating, nothing. It took all your enjoyment from you. It didn't just take your usual mood and make you feel bad in a broad sense. It made sure that you couldn't feel better. And so I recognize now that mood, because I felt like the anxiety attack, that mood was depression. And depression is a mood that's just not the same as being sad, as being upset. It's something else. And the fact that it was a random episode, and that it was a consistent episode, and that I can call it an episode, is probably a sign of a weird, disordered form of maniac depression or bipolar disorder. But in middle school, I overloaded myself a lot. I didn't know my limits. I'd constantly compare myself to others, even though we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and just people will complain about their workload, and someone else will say my workload's higher and I was able to do it, or I'm fine. But this is beyond autism. People just have different strengths, and people, more than that, people just have different load-bearing capacities. And so it's just not weakness. Hell, there's some tasks you're suited to that your body and brain likes that makes it so that you're able to, it's not as much as a load. And so you're able to do that. You guys switch to that different field where you had that. That other person's overall load-bearing capacity could be higher than yours, but because this isn't such a burden on you, and it's the same amount of burden on them, you can handle the work better than they can, and they'll be the one complaining. You can say, do more. And so it's not something. But then there's the bigger plus that we don't know what's fully going on with people's lives. And I was going through a crash course of discovery in middle school of, I have autism, I have Asperger's, I have this problem, I have this problem, I have this problem, and teachers constantly working with me to figure out what my autistic symptoms were. What was autism? What wasn't? How do we work on it? Because autism is just so, you can't make a stereotype about autism. It's such a broad spectrum, so many different symptoms that someone could have, that it's just can't. That's why I don't see it. Granted, people broke down anime girls and the constant weird things they do, which is a trope, and that's my fucking water. Which is a trope, but those weird things that humans not do are actually autistic symptoms. So, fun fact, most anime girls are autistic. Kawaii. That was kawaii. Not kawaii. But anyway, so there's that. There's the burden of my autism, and then also I have my anxiety got severely worse from then. I was traumatized from getting some horrible sickness that caused me to just and also made me not eat for a month. I dropped 30 to 40 pounds in a month due to lack of eating. Ultimate diet. I have never been able to regain the weight. Minus the time I was on a stomach migraine medicine, which honestly helped a lot, except that it increased my appetite a lot, and I didn't quite like that, but I may have to... I should put that on the list for stuff to try, because I'm not okay. Anyway, I'm able to realize now I had other fucking... my low burden capacity is probably fucking piss poor. But I had other stuff going on with my body beating me down. The results of my body beating me down mentally, which when you're beaten down mentally and given depression, makes your ability to do things drop because you just don't have that energy, and also having anxiety attacks that literally feel like pain in your chest, and panic attacks that mimic this weird feeling of nausea that's, I call it just like nausea in my throat. And that's how I can tell it's a panic attack. But if I leave it unchecked, I start dry heaving. And so, woo! I like this bench. And sometimes it kind of mixes. Sometimes I don't know if I'm just especially nauseous that day, or if I am having a panic attack. Fuck, it could be both. And that's also why I will sometimes say panic attack and not anxiety attack, and anxiety attack and not panic attack. I call the anxiety attacks the suffocating and the tightness, and the panic attacks that weird throat nausea. But I had that going on, and I had family issues going on. And I also was a fucking teenager starting puberty. So, y'all know that. Because you were too. Minus the family members who are watching this, but you were all teenagers. Hormones, bitch. Let's not say bitch. Hormones, motherfuckers. That's more appropriate, I guess. Yeah, around the time I got sick, before that, my sister got sick, and almost died. I don't know if it's okay for me to share that. And she's still permanently has problems today because of it. It's encephalitis. It kills most people. She was in a coma. And she has chronic migraines now. Migraines ran in the family. I believe she had them before, but now they're just exorbitantly painful, to the point that even the first time they tried strong opioids, they didn't work. They bring the pain level down. Me and her both gotten used to using the hospital pain medical scale, her more than me. On top of that, she's permanent epileptic. She has absent seizures. She has grandma seizures. She lost a large chunk of her memory, which came back slowly over time, over years, and it's been years to the point that a lot of it's back her. But I've seen her absent seizures, and she doesn't even know who she is when she starts that. And of course she has depression now. She has physical conditions that could kill her. They try so many seizure medicines with her, so many pain medications, and of course they're afraid of the fact, just like opioids, they're the strongest pain fucking medication there are, and there's just pains that just can't be treated with anything else, but they're dangerous, and they're actually careful with them. They don't use the amount the doctor prescribes to her, so it's not that, but we're all tired, but I'm constantly scared of losing my older sister. I haven't said that to anyone before. So that was happening. My mother's just a fucking champion. And I can see with everything, how life has been recently, like, it's hard on me, but the issues I'm having with how life is are the issues she's having, but just much worse. And I feel like, I hope I didn't hit. I feel like I forget that sometimes, and I'm scared for her. She makes a lot of plans and they fall apart, but she eventually gets through. Fuck, what was I trying to say again? But yeah, I've had suicidal depression for a while. I just had an incident where I broke down in a public area and police had to take me to an inpatient psychiatry, and I don't recommend it for a lot of people, and I especially don't recommend it for people with autism. And it's just really sad because I think staff, the nurses, the techs, and a lot of the doctors are, honest to God, trying their best, but it's just eventually got to the point, for some fucking reason, they closed down one of the wings downstairs. And the third floor is filled with, you're either old and psychiatric, so you have very, very bad mental health conditions that come with being extremely old, or you're too dangerous to be downstairs. And so if you're not, a high-risk person, it's not a comfortable place to be. And hell, a lot of the people there don't like it. There was one lady that was trying to escape one day. I couldn't sleep one day because someone was screaming and fighting throughout the night. I had to be moved up because I caught something. I'm sorry, Kia. Shit keeps happening where I can't come over. Thank you for being patient with me. I do enjoy the time we have together. So I had to be moved upstairs because I needed my own room, and they were out of rooms, and you don't have privacy there. And so, and even getting a roommate was bad, but then just being there. And if I hadn't done some things I did and keep together as well as I would, they would have me stay there, and they want me to be confined to my room until the antibiotic time was over. That would be 10 days. And I also don't know what the fuck's happening, because just like the person who prescribed me that was the first person who prescribed me my first round of antibiotics, because I may have had strep throat. He just thrown a phone flashlight and saw it was red, and it's just like, I'm gonna put you in amoxicillin 3 times a day. That won't fuck up your body. And then the disease I caught, they're like, yeah, you caught it because of the amoxicillin, because it's immune to amoxicillin, and amoxicillin kills, fun fact, antibiotic, you have good bacteria throughout your body that helps you, and antibiotics kill that, which is why sometimes, or really any time you take antibiotics, you should be on a respected a respected probiotic to refill that. But this is a bacterial disease that is immune to amoxicillin and probably other antibiotics, that is typically kept out because there's just no fucking room for it, but is able to creep in if you're on an antibiotic it's immune to. So I caught another disease, maybe, because the next day, another medical doctor there, thought that system was fucking dumb and changed it. It may have been 2 days. And the thing is, when that guy prescribed stuff for me again, I didn't trust him. And now I really don't trust him because I think it was decided the same day by another medical doctor upstairs, and then started the next day, that she completely changed the medicine plan again, saying that it was too much. I didn't even consult with that doctor, and she completely disagreed with the other doctor. And so I think I have grounds to not trust a doctor that is not trusted by his fucking peers. I'm ranting. But no, the system's broke. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough fucking... which is fucking Medical City, Frisco, so... let's see how they don't have enough money. But they don't have enough nurses and techs. And especially doctors. There's only 2 psychiatric doctors for the entire system. And they have 1 nurse practitioner each to them, which are doctors in their own. I never met my fucking psychiatric doctor. I had to see, he was out, and I saw another one, and then someone said the system is that you see the psychiatric doctor once and then see the nurse practitioner, but another person that was actually there, another patient, was like, no, I've been seeing my psychiatric a lot, but another patient was like, I've never seen my psychiatric doctor, and then rules were constantly changing. And the thing is, even when rules were constantly changing, I think every one of us that was there for like at least 5 days can say that talking to 3 different people, like 2 different techs or 2 different nurses, you could talk to 3 different people, any combination of nurse and techs, and they will tell you completely different rules. And a few of those that I had to deal with was just not even spite, but just not good communication. There's one incident where we had to eat lunch at specific times, and the nurse... I thought I heard something wrong. I'm gonna get the fuck out. But the nurse... Sorry, something scared me. But the nurse said the milk was bad. The next day, we were asking about the milk, and the actual chefs that work in the kitchen were like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Fun little story, but... No, I was dealing with it for a while, and I wasn't asking for help. I wasn't getting help. And even when I broke down and realized I needed help, I didn't talk to people. There's one thing, if you're family, friends that I haven't talked to in a while, if you're dealing with depression, just one thing, I've been on depression, or one thing, talking to other people and talking to other things, just that you need community, you need friends, and you need probably friends with depression that can... Depression, mental illness just is, well, any mental disease, mental disability, any of that is just so varied. The human mind is so complex, so any issues or differences with it causes... sprinklers on. Causes just completely different problems for a lot of people. And sometimes some mental illnesses will mimic each other, which is fucked, because even if those two mental illnesses can have medicines that can completely work, that have completely worked people and fucking saved their lives or changed their lives. But doctor's not able to tell which one and may misdiagnose you. Fuck, Asperger's is, a lot of people on a certain side are concerned with the rise of autism in children. But when broken down, there's a few factors. One, it's up until the 90s, there wasn't a breakthrough of doctors that thought women could have autism. That's going to cause a spike, because then a lot of people start, and we still have stories of people where they realize that doctors didn't know they have autism. Doctors didn't think girls could have autism. So yeah, that's going to cause a spike once a few doctors realize that, and realize they've misdiagnosed a lot of their female patients. So that's going to cause the first spike. The second spike is just that with ADHD alone, there's a split in the community believing that there's an overdiagnosis of ADHD. With autism, it is a known fact that it is constantly confused with Down syndrome, with ADHD, and OCD by doctors. And so there's a strong misdiagnosis. And then other levels of autism that affect you, if you're high functioning, sometimes you're high functioning enough to just get by in life and struggle, but those struggles can lead to depression. And people just think you're off, you're weird, or maybe they don't know and you figure that you're off and you're just generally weird and you keep it in. This is why a lot of people in the Asperger community don't get as up as other communities in terms of self-diagnosis, because people kind of fucking have to. They kind of have to go and think they have autism and then get themselves tested, because it's not something that's commonly ever brought to them. So I almost didn't get tested for autism. That's for different reasons. Another story. But the fucking point of this video that's just drawn on too long is that I've been depressed for a while. I've said that a lot. And depression is a thing where a lot of big things can pile and pile and pile onto you, and then a lot of small things can pile and pile onto you. It's a misshapen Jenga tower. It's kind of like it's the same thing that happens when you hold in stress, when you hold in anger. It's a misshapen Jenga tower. And one tiny thing can make the whole thing collapse, can make you break down and go into an episode. And that will confuse a lot of people. Because fuck autism, when you're having not that, but please get what I mean. When you're broken down and the only thing you know and are able to even think about is the thing that upset you, that made you break down, that's the only thing you can talk about to someone else, and they're confused, like it's like you're being childish. Why are you getting so upset about this small thing? It's not a small thing. It's a thing that's it's a million different things, a lot of them small, a lot of them big, that you just physically and mentally can't handle anymore. If you can even slightly mentally, sometimes physically you can't handle, and that's the panic attacks and anxiety attacks you don't know. You may have this system, some control you take over, but your body has a limit. And so even if you figured out a way to puppet yourself, it's gonna react, it's gonna break down. And sadly, when you break down, you can't communicate. This is why constant communication is important, why constant expression is important, and why just a therapist that is a good listener, and a good listener makes you feel like you're being understood. They don't have to offer advice most of the time. Just feeling like you're heard is so helpful. Just getting it off your chest is helpful. Feeling like you're heard is even more helpful. It's just so helpful, because then it's out. A lot of those small things are harming you because they're just stuck inside you. They're little needles that just need a pull. Sometimes they're big needles that need a pull. And sometimes they do need working out. And that's why I'm kind of preaching towards therapy. It's so important. It's so integral. And the thing is that we're not equipped to deal with mental illness. People who are not mentally ill are not equipped to deal with mental illness. It's something a good amount of us have realized. It's something not a lot of people mentally ill have realized. It's just, you have to accept you're not capable of helping the same way you're not capable of helping someone who's been shot, who's been stabbed, who's broken their leg. You don't have the knowledge or ability, but you do have the ability to get them help. And you do have the ability to care about them. And that means the fucking world, more than you think. Maybe you do know, but I don't like generalizations. But those small things, even when I laugh and there's still that pain and depression that's behind it, when I'm feeling both of those emotions, it still helps. When I'm feeling both of those and the pain's behind it, it's not getting worse, and it's going down at least a little. It keeps me going till I can get to a point where it can get better. And so those small things save a life. And when you're not getting help, and hell, when you are, depression is a long, long battle. And the longer you leave something untreated, the more infectious and grotesque it becomes. So the more work you have to do and the longer it takes to cure. But those small things save a life over and over and over and over again. And so, thank you, and I love you. Y'all may not want to have anything to do with me anymore. Maybe you feel like we've spent so much time apart and that connection's gone, and that's fine, that's normal. I do miss a lot of you. I miss all of you. Like, I don't like being in a conversation for long, and I'm so shit at something, holding a conversation, that I don't have the knowledge and, sorry, but full interest on. I'm bad at keeping a conversation going, because even if I don't have the interest, if I have the curiosity and the knowledge, I can keep the conversation going. If I have the knowledge, I can keep the conversation going, and it's a fun conversation. But I also have problems with interrupting everything. But thank you, Ariana, Mitchell, David, Nick, Nelson, Nicole, Mr. Behan, Mr. Mraz, Mrs. Long, so many of my teachers, so many friends I've forgotten the names of, I remember the faces of. Chris McFall, my family, Sydney. The times you made me laugh, made me enjoy, let me be myself, just being people I can be myself around. It feels great, because I've always put up a shield, because I'm afraid to be hurt, and I'm paranoid, but I'm also afraid to upset and hurt other people. I hate if I'm forgetting someone's name. Kia. Those fun moments, Mrs. Blackstock. Sorry. Those fun times, those frustrating times, those hype times. Kevin Deanne. Kevin, Andrew, Richard. I forget names, I'm sorry. And there's just a lot of people. But my phone rumbled. I'm still going. Those kept me going. It put the darkness away. It healed the pain, and it gave me a reason why I wanted to fight for tomorrow. There was a lot of dark moments, but there was a lot of time y'all pulled me out of it, and you didn't know. I never said anything. I never could have thought maybe afraid that I'd be too much to deal with, but I'm sorry, just this condition, what I'm going through, my situation makes it hard for me to, it's already just hard for me to reach out to people, but yeah. Thank you all very much. Thank you so much. I hope this video didn't look weird. I am Chase, Jordan, Dean, Kanan, Collier in the coming, and a lot of things. Johnny.